The Arab American community needs to be reminded and cannot forget. He wants to ban Muslims, he wants to deport Muslims, and he wants to start internment camps. And that's what we are busy talking to every voter. He's telling you what he's going to do. Believe him.
Internment camps?
Yes. He has talked internment camps. You know what, Jake? You may have to visit me in one. I get worried enough when he talks about what he's going to do to his political enemies.
Okay, on yesterday's episode of The Lead, Democratic representative, of course, Debbie Dingell, told Jake Tapper that Trump was going to send her to an internment camp. But unfortunately, she's far from the only pundit and lawmaker who's panicked about the possibility of being thrown in prison or an internment camp should Donald Trump get elected for a second term. In fact, let's watch a clip from yesterday's episode of The View in which Mika Brzezinski also broke down on air. Let's watch.
This is the descent into fascism, if we so choose. Normalizing January 6th, it's a day of love. It's a day of love. I'll say it again and again and again. Normalizing enemy from within. I'll say it again and again. I'll say it again and again until you get tired of it, until it's not so funny anymore, or you think he doesn't mean it until you realize he does mean it and it's too late. Saying these strict abortion bans are a beautiful thing. Yeah. Are you kidding me? We got to wake up. And here's the good news, because I come with such dire warnings, and I mean them from the bottom of my heart as a daughter of refugees who came here escaping war, came here for America to be a part of a democracy, to be a part of building something beautiful where they could be free. I'm telling you, the good news is that I believe women will be the beacon in this election.
Am I losing my mind in feeling that this hyperbolic rhetoric is not helpful?
Yeah, well, 50-50 in my opinion.
All right, guys, we got to talk about this fascinating clip on TYT between Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian. Anna is somebody that we know is going through a political evolution, okay? She no longer is on the left, according to her. And I personally think that she has been listening to at least a few voices of reason that have been helping her with her political journey. Take a look.
If you want to win these voters back, then you have to listen to what they're saying. You have to genuinely be curious about what their concerns are. And so here is a Black conservative. He hosts the Black Conservative Perspective on YouTube. His name is George Foreman. And he recently covered this interview. And I thought what he had to say was pretty interesting. So take a look.
I encourage people to get out of this very low level thinking of what is X politician going to do for me based off my race. Okay. It's just not a productive conversation. Okay. You want to know the Black agenda that Trump has. You want to know the Black agenda from Trump. Okay. Since Black people want to talk about what are you going to do for me? No tax on tips, which you have a lot of Black people working these service jobs that rely on tip wages. Okay, like for example, they always want to use the stereotypical Black barbershop, right? You know, barbers, hey, tips go a long way for barbers, okay? I'm not sure why every barber in America isn't telling all of their customers, hey, vote for Trump, okay? Because it's gonna help me out a lot. Paying less taxes, no tax on overtime. You have a lot of Black people working jobs where you're eligible for overtime, closing the border, mass deportations. Yeah, I think that's a lot, right? That's a whole lot of money being put into Black people's pockets, okay, from the Trump agenda, right?
So clearly Trump's messaging on immigration is having an impact. And I do think that Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, of course, sending migrants to liberal cities like Chicago has actually had an impact, along with the messaging from Trump.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I do not think that Anna Kasparian is a fan of Trump at all, to be honest with you. But she doesn't have to be, okay? I'm not one of these people that get upset because everybody doesn't like Trump, right? I understand Trump is some people's cup of tea, and for others, he's not, right? But there's a difference between being like, hey, you know, I just don't like Trump, right? Versus losing your mind over the thought of Trump becoming president of the United States and boohoo whining and crying fascism and Nazi when clearly Trump is not a fascist, he's not a Nazi, and using this hyperbolic rhetoric that clearly is not good for our modern political discourse, which is essentially the argument that Anna Kasparian is going to make to Cenk in criticism of Democrats basically going on national television, claiming things like, for example, that Trump is going to lock them up in internment camps. You have Mika Brzezinski boohoo whining and crying, essentially claiming that Trump is going to kill women. Again, hyperbolic claims that never happened under the first Trump administration. They're not going to happen in the second Trump administration, but they're just saying these things because they don't want Trump to get elected, right? So they'll just say anything in order to prevent him from winning. And Anna is essentially going to call out the Democrats for doing this, and Cenk is going to lose his mind over Anna simply just saying that, hey, I don't think it's a good idea for Democrats in the left to continue to call Trump a fascist. Take a look.
So when Debbie Dingell says he's going to start internment camps, he never said that. That is not helpful. On that, you're 100% right. Because once she says something that he didn't say, then not only the right wing, but independents will discount every other thing you've said. Not just every other thing you've said, but every other thing that anyone on the left has said. He never said internment camps. Don't say that.
And the notion of a fascist, because look, if we're just gonna use fascist toward anyone we dislike, all right, then the word doesn't actually mean anything.
Okay, what do you want me to say, Anna? You want me to say wannabe dictator?
Sure, you can say wannabe dictator, but I don't even think he wants to be a dictator.
Of course he does. That's what you do when you lose an election and you go, oh, I got fake electors and I'd like to terminate the Constitution and bring out the tanks and use martial law against American citizens and shoot protesters. I mean, if that's not fascist, then I guess the word just shouldn't exist.
But was he able to do those things?
First of all, his entire cabinet had to threaten, not cabinet, administration, his White House team had to say, we're all going to mass resign if you roll out tanks against American citizens.
Okay, so if you think he's a fascist, wouldn't that justify taking physical action against him?
No, because that doesn't help. That devolves us further into fascism.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a difference between somebody shooting someone, that's fascism, and saying, I disagree with them. Don't elect a fascist prick who says only white people are awesome and everybody else is garbage and should be banned. No, look, I'm not gonna take a chance with a monster like that.
I know, you're focusing on whether or not you're gonna vote for him. I don't give a damn about that, and that's not what I'm asking you about, Cenk. I don't think that this rhetoric, especially from elected members of Congress, is helpful at a time.
I don't agree.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well, Anna, why do I not agree? Because, so Trump's helpful is rhetoric?
No, his rhetoric is awful.
Okay, if you don't want to be called fascist, stop saying fascist things. It's not that hard.
Okay.
Not that hard. Oh, here, let me have dinner with Nick Fuentes, who's a Nazi, Kanye, who's a Nazi, and let me say there's good people on the Nazi side. Oh, it could be pro-Confederate guys. Might be guys who are pro-slavery who are good guys. Let me do all of these things. Let me say that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, a Nazi term that is only used in the past by Nazis, and then say I'm gonna ban Muslims, I'm gonna do this and this and this to all the other ethnic groups, and then go, oh, I can't believe you called me a fascist. No, he is a fascist. I'm very happy to call him a fascist.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious, okay? Cenk, his Trump derangement is just, again, it's turned up to the max, okay? This guy says that, well, once you start saying that Trump is saying things that he didn't say, then you lose credibility. But yet, this guy literally said that Trump said things that he didn't say. Like, for example, he just peddled the both sides hoax that the Democrats continue to peddle, which has been proven to be false, okay? Trying to say that Trump was saying that, pro-Confederate or neo-Nazi people were good people or whatever. Just because you don't want to see historic statues be torn down in this country does not make you pro-Confederate, right? I don't want to see historic statues in this country be torn down by left-wing mobs. That doesn't make me pro-Confederate, right? And to say that a black person is pro-Confederate because I don't want to see history be taken down, yeah, I think that sounds really stupid, right? Just like I think calling Kanye West a Nazi is also pretty stupid as well, too. Even if he says things that, again, make people feel uncomfortable, that it doesn't mean he's a Nazi, right? And, again, it's just funny how that works, right? I mean, what Anna here, the argument that she's actually really making, that Cenk is ignoring, is whether or not this rhetoric is helpful, right? Does it help politically? And I would argue that no, it doesn't help, because Democrats have not gotten the boost in the polls that they've been looking for as a result of campaign strategy switch of saying, hey, let's not focus on the real issues at all, right? Let's stop talking about the economy, the border, foreign policy, things that people actually care about, crime. Let's stop talking about that. Let's just talk about how Trump's a Nazi and a fascist. That hasn't really helped the left, okay? It hasn't helped them out at all, okay? And the reason why is because I think a lot of people in this country don't really understand what fascism actually is, first and foremost. So calling him a fascist really just sounds kind of empty. And then calling him a Nazi clearly is hyperbolic, because under Trump's first administration, he didn't do anything at all that comes close to what Adolf Hitler or the Nazis did in Germany, right? I mean, there's no comparison whatsoever, right? He didn't even come close, okay? The best thing that these people have are things that Trump allegedly said, a lot of things that they're saying taken out of context or just completely made up, and things that, again, he allegedly tried to do, but again, didn't do or didn't happen, right? This is the argument that they're making, right? Hey, well, Trump allegedly said a bunch of things behind closed doors that we don't really know if he actually said. And, they didn't actually happen, but he's still a fascist because he says things I don't like, right? He says things that make me uncomfortable. So therefore he's a fascist. That's the gist of Cenk's argument. But the American people understand and know that all of these things that they are boohoo whining and crying about that is supposed to happen under his second administration didn't happen under his first. So again, why would you believe it would happen under his second administration? Because as Anna brought up in this argument, we have guardrails in place to prevent these types of things, right? All these things that these people are boohoo whining and crying about, like Trump placing journalists in internment camps. Yeah, we have a system of laws in place that prevent those type of things, right? Well, the president is not a dictator, and the president can't be a dictator even if he wanted to be a dictator, right? Like, for example, okay, these people boohoo whine and cry so much about Trump and his attempts to challenge the election, the outcome of the 2020 election, which is something that Democrats have done, okay, for the longest time now. Let's be clear, right? But again, they want to make it out that Trump did something like that, is so bad, so terrible, although Democrats do it. But anyways, we have a system in place in which even a sitting president who believes that he didn't lose the election, they can't just overturn the election, right? They can't just say, nah, I didn't lose and I'm just going to overturn the election, right? That didn't happen, okay? There's a process that you have to go through in order to challenge the election. He went through that process, and unfortunately for Trump, it didn't work out. Now, when he actually had a chance to try to be a dictator, to attempt to be a dictator, right, which would be to stay in office, to say, no, I'm the rightful winner. I am not leaving the White House. I'm going to declare martial law, take unilateral control over the military, and if you don't like it, then you're going to have to kill me, right, in order to get me out of office. He didn't do that. Right? He decided, nah, I'm going to step down. That was his opportunity to be a dictator. Trump had plenty of opportunities to be a dictator if he actually really wanted to. Like, for example, during the pandemic. That was the perfect time for Trump to say, nah, I'm a dictator and I am going to take more power and control as president of the United States over the country, right? He could have done that. But he actually chose not to. He actually chose to do the exact opposite. Okay? He actually let Democrats run their states and he let Republicans run their states instead of saying that, well, as president, I am going to violate the 10th Amendment and just force the blue states to stay open and to do what I want to do because, hey, I don't want to lose the election because of all the lockdowns and stuff like that. That's what he could have did, but he chose not to. He chose not to. He actively chose not to, which, by the way, this is what Democrats advocate for. When they claim that they could have done a better job than Trump when it comes to handling the pandemic and the virus, what they're essentially admitting is that, yeah, if a Democrat was in office, they would have violated the 10th Amendment and forced states like Florida, red states that did not want to shut down, they would have forced them to shut down. They would have used the power of the executive branch to do that. The federal government. This is what Democrats admit. Because when they got in office, what did they do? When they got in office, they tried to force an experimental vaccine into people's arms. They also tried to weaponize the government to force social media companies to censor any type of misinformation or disinformation that didn't go along with the Democrat narrative on the pandemic, right? This is what they did. And again, use the pandemic as an excuse to censor free speech. Sounds to me like fascism, right? Sounds to me like autocracy, authoritarianism. The Biden administration, Democrats, they're the ones that have essentially set the precedent that it's okay to ignore the Supreme Court, okay? When it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to the border, when it comes to the rent moratorium, right? You guys remember that? How they just went out of their way to ignore the Supreme Court, right? And the Supreme Court said, nah, y'all can't continue to do this. And Democrats said, nah, screw it. We're going to keep doing it anyways. We're just going to ignore the court. And they've done this with student loan debt relief as well, too, right? So again, Democrats have essentially said, screw the balance of power. Screw the Supreme Court. We're just going to ignore it, right? We're going to do whatever we want to do via the executive branch. Sounds to me to be pretty dictatorial, right? These are tendencies of a dictator, right? A dictator would do something like that. Again, when Trump had the opportunity to flex his power as president of the United States to try to be a dictator during the pandemic, which was a prime time to do it because he could have used the pandemic as an excuse to do whatever he wanted to do, right? He chose not to do it. But Democrats, when they got in power, they chose to do it. So, again, this is why these arguments are they're silly. They're trying to pretend that Trump is something that he's not and that Democrats aren't something that they are, okay? And this is what I try to tell you guys about how Democrats, the best thing that they have been able to do during this election season is to project, because everything that comes out of their mouth, everything they talk about, everything they fearmonger about when it comes to what Trump might do is exactly what they are going to do or what they have done in the past, right? That's the funny part about this. So yeah, Anna Kasparian is right in the sense that calling Trump a fascist is not going to help. And also on top of that, what they're really doing is that they're setting up an environment where a lot of people are going to lose their minds after Trump wins, if he wins. And again, that's not going to be a good environment. And I guarantee you, none of these people will take responsibility for what we may see as a result of Trump winning from the far left extremists who've been radicalized by these individuals. And if this is the closing argument from the Democrats that Trump is a fascist, he's a Nazi, then this closing argument is essentially the best closing argument they could make for helping Trump win, right? Because the closing argument should be about the real issues that people care about, not this hyperbolic rhetoric that everybody knows is not true. Again, it seems to me that they're setting up Trump to win with this type of rhetoric. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.